The newest company vying for the title of the most valuable in the world isn't selling phones, oil, or an infinite stream of vertical video content that lobotomizes middle schoolers. I'm talking about Nvidia, the shop designing tiny little chip doohickeys that power tomorrow's AI technology, led by a masochistic Top Gun cosplayer. But as Nvidia continues blazing its path as one of the best performing stocks of all time, fueling the market's hottest 2-year run in a century, Dan Toomey's got some questions. Questions like, what do these MFs actually do? How did they get here? And are we sure the road they're driving our economy down is a good one? Stakes high enough for you? Let's fucking do this. The tale of Nvidia begins where most of my nights end. The Denny's on Berryessa Road in San Jose, California. That's where Nvidia co-founder and CEO Jensen Huang embarked on his mission to design fancy computer chips while having the worst logo ever made. Despite his initial sweet boy vibe, Jensen proved to be a Tier 1 capitalism maniac, transforming Nvidia from a niche video game graphics chip designer into the primary arms dealer in the race to develop AI and integrate it into society. Now obviously there's a ton of complicated stuff that I could tell you about how Jensen and Nvidia accomplished this transformation, but I went to the Ryan Seacrest School of Journalism, where details are the enemy of clicks. So long story short, it turns out that the computer chips Nvidia was building back in the day to make video games look cooler are actually the perfect chip for doing complex computing that tech companies need to do today if they want to build cool AI stuff. For example, the fastest selling app of all time, ChatGPT, which is precisely the sort of thing that can only be built using the hardware Nvidia got a decade-plus head start on the rest of the world designing. And when Wall Street put all that together, well, there's no easy way to say it, but I am a reporter, so I'm obligated to tell you the truth. They jizzed all over the place.
Nvidia's rocking the entire market right now.
Nvidia stock has absolutely exploded today.
Nvidia has done it again.
Nvidia's stock price went to the moon.
Nvidia.
I just renamed my darn dog Nvidia.
Hey there. Big news, we just got this fancy new green screen. Check this out. Desert! Pretty cool, right? Tundra! Anyway, all this fun stuff costs us money, so it's time to pay some bills. The Fundrise Flagship Fund is a $1.1 billion real estate fund open to investors of all sizes. Investing in real estate used to be primarily limited to rich, institutional investors, but all you need to invest in the Fundrise Flagship Fund is $10. Investing in real estate can be a good way to diversify your portfolio and also hedge against some inflation. So if any of that sounds up your tree, do yourself a favor and go check out that Fundrise Flagship Fund. Himalayas! On May 25th, 2023, Nvidia's market cap increased by over $200 billion, one of the largest single-day gains in history. Around the same time, Jensen told investors that Nvidia had sold its supercomputers to 50 of the 100 largest companies in America, a feeding frenzy that's still leaving our economic waters chummed and bloody. Big tech now spends hundreds of billions of dollars annually on AI chips, hoping to create more ChatGPT-like breakthroughs, and Nvidia controls a whopping 90% of that market. Since ChatGPT's release, Nvidia's stock has risen over 900%. It accounted for a quarter of the S&P 500's gains last year. And yes, it's now trading places with Apple as the most valuable company in the world.
This stock has a cult following in the truest sense of the word.
Emma Cosgrove is a Business Insider reporter covering Nvidia and the broader AI ecosystem.
I have seen poems written about Nvidia. Really flowery letters to Jensen posted publicly. Last year at GTC, which is their big conference, Jensen Huang signed someone's boobs. So,
Now I'm sure the wet blankets among you are looking at these Nvidia bitty titties and thinking, surely arise, this meteoric must be a little overrated. But unfortunately, haters, I regret to inform you, there is a strong case that Nvidia might really be worth all this noise. They have historic revenue numbers and sell an actual product that the richest companies in the world keep buying over and over again. And it's not just chips. Nvidia sells all the shit around the chips that you need to get them to work. making customers dependent on Nvidia's infrastructure and leaving competitors struggling to find a way into the market. The point is that if it turns out AI is going to be the basis for all of society's future technology, a world full of AI search engines, warehouses, cars, robots, virtual doctors, and more, all driven by acres of data centers filled to the brim with humming racks of Nvidia chips, then it seems like Nvidia is perfectly positioned to dom the economic universe for the rest of time. But whenever something seems perfectly positioned, well, that's when my investigative bone gets peaked to poke around in there. See how perfectly positioned it really is. Do a little hokey pokey. I start asking questions.
Relations between Taiwan and China are a threat to the entire semiconductor ecosystem.
Ha! Bingo! Perfectly positioned my tush.
All these companies rely on a single company in Taiwan, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, TSMC, which is the world's most important semiconductor manufacturer. It produces around 99% of the chips that are used in developing artificial intelligence systems.
Chris Miller is the author of Chip War, which details the rise of semiconductors into becoming the world's most crucial technology.
As China's military power has grown over the last couple of years, and as Xi Jinping has turned Chinese foreign policy in a more aggressive direction, this has become a more real risk. The challenge that tech companies face, though, is that there aren't great alternatives.
Even though it seems to be a somewhat precarious position for Taiwan to be the ones who manufacture all of these chips, Miller High Life here emphasized how difficult it would be to whip up new factories somewhere else, despite our best efforts. But China invading Taiwan isn't the only potential speed bump on Nvidia's road to world domination. For starters, even though Nvidia is by far the biggest fish in the semiconductor pond today, they'll inevitably face some competition, either from their customers, the big tech companies who are developing their own chips so they can stop Venmoing Jensen fat stacks for Nvidia's, or from other dedicated chip developers like AMD or Intel or some other startup I haven't heard about yet.
Nvidia's got, I think, a challenging couple of years ahead of them as they need to race ahead of all these competitors. These aren't unimpressive competitors. These are the biggest tech firms in the world. And so it's far from guaranteed that Nvidia retains the pretty extraordinary market share that it has today.
But you know what, Chris? We could spend all day wondering about whether or not some competition might come down the pike for Nvidia. But right now, when I look at the extraordinary market share Nvidia has today, and when I read estimates that apparently their $25,000 chip only costs them $3,000 to make, oh boy, I start smelling whiffs of a big ol' stanky-ass illegal monopoly. Are you sniffing what I'm whiffing, former chairman of the Federal Trade Commission under Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama, Bill Kovacic?
For conventional antitrust purposes, the answer would be yes. The tricky part of the analysis is that it's a very dynamic setting. Firms rise and fall, sometimes fairly quickly. A key issue is how durable their position is in the market. Right now, for AI-related chips, it's quite substantial. The reason we're seeing so much scrutiny at the moment is a belief on the part of the antitrust authorities in the United States and abroad that if you wait too long, you lose your chance to shape the evolution of the industry.
Bill told me that the antitrust folks today tend to look back on the early days of tech giants like Google and Meta and regret that they didn't take more action to prevent them from gaining so much power. Which is probably why last year the Department of Justice joined Europe and China in scaling up its investigation into whether or not Nvidia has violated antitrust laws. Now, jury's out on where all that's going to go with Trump rolling into Washington. But even as Nvidia avoids antitrust penalties, there's another, probably bigger challenge lurking for Nvidia and tech's AI revolution at large.
The ultimate ceiling on AI is energy availability. It's the most important one. As far as I know, no one has solved for it. AI data centers could add 3 New York cities of demand to the US grid in the next 2 years. And that was from July, so we're 6 months in.
There's evidence that AI's massive energy needs are actually sucking up so much power from the grid that it's distorting the flow of electricity to millions of homes, causing billions of dollars in damage and even making household appliances run hot and rattle, which means bad news. We're going to have to put down the Pixar lamp. Anyway, one potentially promising solution is getting clean energy from nuclear plants, something all the big tech groups are investing in. However, nuclear is notoriously finicky, especially in the US, where investment has been lacking, so that move isn't a sure thing.
It's a point of great conflict for me personally when I think about the emissions generated by like a single grok image made for funsies. The value of what we are creating with AI, we don't get to decide, like the societal value of it. Everybody gets to use it the way they want to use it, and it is incredibly energy intensive and therefore quite emissions driving, and that's uncomfortable.
And listen, folks, we've been touching on some pretty heavy shit. Global conflict, antitrust laws, sacrificing the planet so I can slap a photorealistic penis in the middle of Dennis Quaid's forehead. But none of these concerns will even matter until somebody figures out how to turn all this investment in Nvidia technology into AI products that people actually want.
What is the killer app? What has changed about most people's lives from ChatGPT? What has changed? And the answer is really not much other than boiling oceans to generate bad images.
Hold up. You just made Penis Quaid flaccid. Not cool. Ed Zitron is an author, newsletter writer, and AI skeptic. One of his main arguments is that for all of the money we've seen pouring into artificial intelligence, and for as high as Nvidia's valuation has gone, we haven't actually seen anyone turn AI into a really good, ubiquitous product.
It's people saying, AI chip come from Nvidia go boom, money, money. And you can run a stock market pretty high on that, but that's an entire narrative-based run. Like, Nvidia is selling real things and these exist and they're getting money for it, but how much of that is fueled by hype? I would say almost all of it.
Now, to heat check sad English me for a second, is anyone else out there this down on big AI's go-to-market plan? Well, some pretty smart folks think AI isn't going to be as huge a part of the economy as big tech thinks it will be. Meanwhile, we are running out of data to train stuff like ChatGPT, and reports from inside OpenAI indicate that they are struggling to make the next version better than the current one. Even goddamn Google says fattening up your data center with more Nvidia chips just ain't advancing AI like it used to. And Ed here argues that once we see the limits of AI more clearly, the big boys who've been driving these chip purchases will stop reaching for the checkbook.
They're all following each other. So at some point, investors are going to start saying, this doesn't seem to be making money. In fact, they seem to be losing money. Once one of them slows ordering, everything falls down, and there really is not a backup plan there at this scale. Not saying that Nvidia will disappear, that's not true, and anyone suggesting otherwise is very silly. However, Nvidia's in a weird spot right now. I would start worrying. I mean, I'm perpetually worrying, but that's just being British.
Indeed, maybe Ed is just being British. So let me say it plain like an American. Nvidia is rich as balls. They've gotten this rich because they think AI is going to be the future of basically everything, and the rest of big tech is following their lead. And because of how rich and powerful Nvidia now is, the idea that all of the resources we're pouring into this will give us back a productive AI-centric future has become a narrative we're all just kind of accepting. But Nvidia's bet on AI is still just that, a bet.
Was this a good idea? Not even from a AI taking over the world perspective, but from a should we have made these really big expensive data centers that are now sunk cost essentially? Should we have done this? Was this what we needed to do to bring about the next era of human productivity? I mean, the people I speak to every day are 100% sold. The gulf between true believers and those who think we're making a massive mistake, there are really smart people on both sides.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Emma. So the next time you see Jensen talking up a big game on stage in that old leather jacket, or the next time Nvidia's market cap becomes the highest in the world, just remember, everyone's gambling. Some people are just doing it with a lot more chips. For good work, I'm Dan Toomey.
And in other news, serial journophile Dan Toomey has been apprehended by authorities after his use of AI software to generate an image of Dennis Quaid with an erect penis on his forehead emitted thousands of kilotons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, desecrating 38 miles of tropical rainforest in Papua New Guinea. Officials say it took Toomey upwards of 300 times to generate the image on Grok so he could, quote, get the shaft how I wanted it. Mr. Toomey faces 48 years in federal prison, although in response, Dennis Quaid's lawyers said, "We're only happy if he gets life."